Welcome to part one of the Dimensions Report number 3, which uses the concept of dimensions of value to show how throughout its history, IKEA has comprehensively developed its most important suppliers. This report will show how between the 1950s and 80s, IKEA improved supplier operations by improving its own supply chain. In the 90s, suppliers were more viable in the IKEA supply chain because IKEA improved the supplier interfaces. And in the first decade of this century, IKEA raised the viability of a supplier in its own industry by itself becoming a network orchestrator. These developments all took place in 4 dimensions of value. Part 2 of this report will cover developments in this decade. How did this buildup take place? In the 50s, IKEA gave bulk orders to Swedish furniture producers, offering them a higher market share in their own market. This is degree value, a raised status. Suppliers improved their capacity utilization because IKEA became more competent in purchasing finished goods. In the 60s, IKEA developed the flat packs, with which suppliers oriented their products and packages to a new consumer trend. This is delight value, fulfilling a vision of a new way to furnish homes which improves all involved jobs and lives. Supplier outputs became modern because IKEA improved its product design and logistics. In the 70s, IKEA extended its supplier network to Poland and began contract manufacturing. Suppliers were selected for their technical specialties, giving them the deed value of fine-tuning their specialized operations to meet IKEA's contract specifications. They built their capabilities in series production for different volumes and speeds in parallel to IKEA's capabilities in designing production processes and managing service level agreements. In the 80s, IKEA began relationships with sub-suppliers in order to secure the right raw materials for their suppliers and shared knowledge with suppliers. Suppliers gained from higher standards for materials and production processes. This is dexterity value, meeting market standards. Suppliers improved their process management in production due to IKEA's competence in purchasing raw materials and transferring knowledge. Moving on to the 90s, IKEA began to source from China and built up processes and systems interfacing with suppliers. In degree, IKEA offered value as a reference customer such that suppliers became globalized players due to their access to IKEA's position as a leading retailer. Suppliers realized delight value in fulfilling their vision of themselves becoming active in product development with expanded facilities, co-financed by investments from IKEA. Thus, suppliers could plan their growth due to IKEA's product development and capacity planning, which allowed for external resources. Indeed, suppliers were offered a role in themselves ordering and managing inventory at IKEA stores and warehouses, such that they could adjust and plan their production on the basis of access to IKEA's ordering, inventory, and transport systems. In dexterity, suppliers were supported in meeting environmental, societal, and governance requirements, where their ability to meet these global standards profited from IKEA's supplier relationship management and decentralized trading centers with close relations to individual suppliers. In this century, IKEA created a multipolar network where a supplier could be a pole in the network. By absorbing IKEA's functional excellence, the suppliers gained the status of being suppliers of choice in their own industry. With IKEA, they developed new technologies to realize the vision of being a first mover. As a pole in IKEA's network, they could adjust their activities in networking with other firms. And the standardized work relations with IKEA could be applied to their own customer relationship management with other B2B customers. IKEA's value offers were built on its systematic and centralized supply chain orchestrating the supplier network, in which suppliers could be treated as if they were business units in IKEA. In sum, key to IKEA's world-class supply chain has been the build-up of specific and targeted value offers in 4 dimensions to its most important suppliers, where IKEA developed its own supply chain and suppliers in parallel. If you want to find out more about dimensions of value, have a look at the website, read one of the books, and/or subscribe to this channel.